I have to say this is a pretty good start. You know, in seeing Nero's Legion, like seeing these guys. I'm hoping these are like bottom of the barrel kind of guys. I'm hoping Oric, Brittany, and Mora are kind of like normal. They're like the regular kind of dudes. Because if it's that these guys are the bottom, I feel like that's going to be too difficult of a climb for this arc to kind of get. Whereas like these are the normal guys. Like maybe there's 2 tiers above them and then Nero. That's something that I feel like is way more feasible. And because otherwise it would be like you'd have to do probably like 100 something chapters just to do Nero's arc. I don't know if it's going to be that long. Maybe, who knows. Either way, when it comes to like right now, I do really like this set because each of the characters are getting pushed and it all looks like a pretty, you know, reasonable way for them to win. None of them seem to like this is a almost all is lost moment. They're all kind of just like they just had to use whatever their big move was. One sort of when it comes to Rebecca, but starting out, I like Oric. I think he's pretty cool. I like his ability to kind of like absorb machines into his arm, but also just his arm is robotic in of itself. And then he just like grabs onto a drone, throws it at Shiki, you know, explodes behind him. He doesn't look at the explosion. Shiki's just dead-eye, ready to fight. And then they go and they clash, like just the punches, and how fast this whole like motion is. Because during the time that he's thrown this this drone, he's been advancing onto Shiki, goes in for an attack. He knows it's not gonna work for him in like a clash of punches because of Shiki. Like he even mentions like it's you know, that's a really heavy punch. He knows he's not gonna win in a physical battle, so he switches to this ether Gatling gun and just does ranged heavy fire on him. I thought this was just a really cool, very fluid set of moves from this dude, and I thought that was pretty badass about him, just because he doesn't seem that powerful in terms of being an opponent. Like the other two have a tricky power, he's got like just a brute force power. None of these guys are like big boss level people. They're all mid boss level characters. They're just like, we just have to figure out how to get around one thing about them. And I think that's, again, I think that's a really good start. I think that's pretty fantastic. Because like going back into, you know, going into the Sun Jewel, like it was what, the big rock monster that they fought, or whatever it was, the Black Rock. And then in Dragon Joe, it was what, fighting, seeing Witch go through, was it Seth, Diego, and Maria? Like it was put up in a way like we know Witch was strong, but she dominated them, and it did make them seem overall as powerful. I think one of the things that was really good about this chapter and that whole arc was that Laguna mentioned that Draken Joe was weakened because they messed with his machine that kind of like balanced him to be young. And like otherwise he was way more powerful. Because when we see these guys and then we see Draken Joe, I think it's important to kind of differentiate the versions we saw and versions that actually was, you know, prior to them messing with the machine. The 2 different levels of Draken Joe. Because it would be weird if, for one, it'd be weird if Shiki had to put this much effort, he had to go into Overdrive to defeat somebody like Oric, if that meant that Oric was like on the same difficulty as Draken Joe. It'd be like, no, but I got some weakened Draken Joe, sure. Like Draken Joe in just kind of like a falling apart state. Yeah, I can kind of get that. If Draken Joe was in his prime, then, you know, no, absolutely not. I don't think Shiki would have been able to defeat him. But like that just kind of builds Draken Joe things. Because I feel like when it comes to Draken Joe versus like comparing him and Nero, I feel like Nero has a way bigger legion and overall stronger troops, but I feel like Draken Joe as a singular character is stronger than Nero as a singular character. I'm just kind of guessing right now. I can't say for sure. That's just kind of a feeling I have. But yeah, I do like these guys so far. I think these guys are pretty cool so far. I think Orc's pretty badass. I think his power is straightforward, just interesting and cool. Doesn't have to be complicated. The other two have a tricky power, and it's just how they can figure out to get around it. How they can figure out how to get around it. I feel like I fumbled some of those words for a second. But I also really like the description of Shiki, like how he moves with his powers, because generally you'd think that like the way that Shiki moves, it's generally like very very fast. He's dashing to spot, or he's jumping far distances, or he's just pretty much flying. But the way that it actually is Shiki is using gravity to like make him either fall in different directions in different ways. Like when he's flying, it probably feels like he's falling down, or he's literally just kind of like reversing gravity. I guess to him it would always feel like that. He would always be at that ground level. Like Shiki would, like anytime he's using his power like that, he would always kind of like feeling like he's standing up. So yeah, it would just always feel like he's falling in different directions. Again, I think that's really cool in general. Just like I think that's a badass way to kind of describe his powers. It's so creative, and that's what I really like about Shiki's moveset. And that's again also one of the reasons, again, anybody out there that like eventually wants Shiki to get a black hole, no, wormhole. Wormhole's cooler. It goes better with the way Shiki fights. Because a black hole's just cool because it's a black hole. It's like a really broken power. But a wormhole would mean Shiki would be able to fall and drop portals and then just appear like anywhere on the battlefield. I think that would be way cooler for Shiki. Come on, it's way cooler. Anyway, I really also liked when Shiki was like talking about him, because talking about his grandfather rather, because Orcs like ask him where he got his powers, because we know Shura's whole like description, like, oh, he's got like the same Demon King code. He also uses gravity, ether gear. I think that was a really cool reveal. I'm wondering how many of them there are. I'm still guessing 6. And I like that he's trying to figure out like, oh, because he knows Shura, like Orc knows Shura or knows of Shura, and he's like trying to figure out like, where did you get this power? Maybe he wants it, or he wants to figure out like how many other Demon King code people are there out there, and like just exactly what's the deal. Like I feel like he's just kind of confused by it. And then he's like, Shiki's talking about his grandfather. He's like, oh, his grandfather taught it to me. And probably like the way he describes Ziki as his grandfather it seems a little confusing to Orc. But like Shiki is like talking about like how good things about his grandfather. It's like saying he could be strict, but he's actually really nice. And he's like crying. And that's such a big moment about Shiki that makes him so different from Natsu. And again, it still doesn't happen that much anymore, but still happens sometimes. And like I love both Eden Zero and I love Fairy Tail, but obviously I lean more towards Fairy Tail content. But like I imagine like people who are more towards Eden Zero, they probably deal with that way more than I do. And it's such an annoying thing because you can see very key things about their characters that it's like there's no way anybody who actually read both series or even reads them part way would think they're the same. Like Natsu could think about something sad and he could kind of just get bummed out. Shiki just gets some like kind of like mixture happy sad tears. Like I really like that about Shiki too, is because Shiki can just be very emotional, but it's not done in like an obnoxious way. It's just kind of done in like a kind of an endearing way. You kind of feel bad for him, but you like that about him. Because again, Shiki can both do that and then go, into Overdrive and just destroy people. Like Shiki's just a fun dude. Anyway, like them just kind of fighting, and I think this chapter was really big for his character because we now have 3 kind of like reasons to find Mother and kind of like things in the kind of grand scheme of everything. Because there's wanting to find Mother so they can get, BQBing recordings for Rebecca. There's also the kind of good side, just to like Shiki's mind, like him wanting to get to Mother to surpass his grandfather, kind of on the happier side how he thinks things, and then stopping his grandfather who's trying to get to Mother too. Because to me, I think that Shiki just really wants to fix his grandfather. I think he wants to help him. I think he just sees that there's something wrong with him, and I think it ties back into Shiki's whole thing of back at Granbell that he would fix the other robots, and he probably just sees that there's something wrong with his grandfather and he wants to figure out how to fix him. But in this chapter, like while he's talking to Orc is saying how like they're here to purge all the robots because the robots are now turning against the humans. and Orc's like, oh, we're gonna kill all the robots to protect the humans, and it's been decreed by Poseidon Nero. It's like, from their perspective, they're just gonna destroy all robots no matter what. And Shiki's upset because this is partially his grandfather's fault, and he doesn't want anyone to stop him but himself. He doesn't want Poseidon Nero to stop Ziggy, because Shiki's like, he's like, oh, Poseidon Nero, and then that's when Orc brings up, oh yeah, they're part of his group, and we see a little bit from the other two again. I like Orc's power is very straightforward, and I like that these two are like the tricky people, but both of their fights, there's definitely win strategies in there. I'm a little curious about Rebecca's, because for the most part, she's got, enhanced speed with like her level of kind of like almost time, or it is time manipulation. It's like a degree of time manipulation and guns. Like, she doesn't have any kind of crazy moves currently. I'm wondering, like, she has Pino there. So I'm wondering right now if Pino could just EMP and then Rebecca just jumps on Brittany and they get into like a regular just fight. I feel like that would be a pretty fair way to defeat her, because right now, like, her thing is just that you can't shoot her and there's nothing really she can do. But I did like that both, I did really like that both Brittany and Mora's powers are Rave Master references. I thought that was really cool. You have, Brittany's a smoke bar, which is from the villain from the dog track way back the early area of Wraith Master, where Haru met Ellie. And then you have Morris's glue tier, who is one of the henchmen of Shuda, where Haru, like, when it was on I can't remember what it was called, Bohemia. I can't remember exactly what Shuda's ship was called, but it was the one that Haru actually ended up beating Shuda on. But I like both of their powers are references, but I also did really like, I really like this, that Mishima did this. I thought this was great, because his power is glue. He's got like normal kind of just like, he can shoot out glue, and then he can make it kind of hard really fast, and he can make it like way more elastic. I don't know if I'm saying that word right. Elastic. But fuck, I don't know if I'm saying that word right. Either way, he makes it way more stretchy. Anyway, he can just manipulate after it goes out with his cane, I imagine, or his ether gear. I wonder if he actually has ether gear. It's kind of hard to tell when he doesn't have freaking his gloves on. I'm wondering, like, how much of it is the difference between his power and what does the cane do. Like, maybe he can make the glue, his cane is what manipulates it, and kind of like makes it, kind of like changes properties of it. Because I really like that Mishima did hot glue. I thought that was actually just really funny. It was I just thought it was a creative way to use the power. Because it makes sense. It's like, yeah, you can hot glue gun. Like, you can get hot glue on something. It would suck. It'd be painful. And obviously on top of that, it's gonna dry and it's gonna be sticky and shit. It'd be horrible to be covered in hot glue. Imagine, it would suck ass. But Homura getting hit by that, on top of heat being her weakness, like that's the big thing I think is the problem for her in this fight. Because we know how weak she is to the heat, and obviously there's fires around. I'm wondering though, if she can just drop Battle Dress from this distance, because I don't know if Battle Dress is something they just get permanently, or if it has to do with the Eden Zero ship. I'm not 100% certain how exactly they equip Battle Dress. I assumed it was something they kind of get, but I don't know, like, exactly what it, like, where they would, like, put on, or just, like, is it just an ether requip kind of thing? I think actually that makes probably the most sense, honestly. But if Homura just went Battle Dress, if she just did whatever she needs to do to use Battle Dress, because I feel like Battle Dress, she's gonna have some like new sword that she just runs through, runs through him, or figures out a way to defeat him. Because she could honestly just like go into Battle Dress and was that like double like blade spin, and then create like a massive tornado and like shoot him into the air or something. But yeah, she could definitely figure out something out. I think hers will be a little bit creative because she's against a weird opponent. But Shiki, I thought Shiki's was really cool, both on levels of it, like the level of difficulty that they have against these guys, where they they can beat them, but they have to use all their best stuff. They have to kind of like really put in the effort. It's not like a limit breaking fight. It's just kind of like they have to pull out all the stops. They have to use this, you know, whatever their best strategy is. And it's nothing kind of like a boss fight. It's just like each of them is like a chapter fight pretty much. Nothing too big. But Shiki going into Overdrive, I did really like the description of also like his gravity changing, because one thing about Shiki's powers is we see his ether lines change colors. Like originally it was green, and then we saw the colored pages for his Demon King form, it was purple, and also his hair turns white, and, you know, he gets the horns, and, you know, his arms change and stuff. But obviously if we saw this in black and white and we never saw it in color, it would be like, oh, you would just assume that his ether lines are still green, but it's like, no, they change colors. Also his outfit changes with it. I always thought that was really cool about Shiki's whole design. Like I always really just like that Shiki's outfit gets cooler whenever he uses his overdrive, and I'm hoping that always just happens whenever someone gets overdrive. It's just this really badass thematic change, nothing plain. I don't want anyone to have a very plain overdrive. I'm really hoping that's something Mishima does, because we don't exactly know what kind of gap you're going to get from where like the ether lines start moving off their body and then what it turns into. Like it just almost looks like a hieroglyphic of it, or not a hieroglyphic, a schematic of it rather, and then it merges and has some crazy like twist on whatever it is. But anyway, like Shiki's gravity changing, and then here he comes, like he's talking about like, oh, you know, your ether's critical point, you know, the overdrive, you know, and then he just drops Meteor Breaker and then just takes him out. I thought that was just a really cool, fair battle against this guy. Nothing too big, nothing too crazy, but again, a really nice just setup for what's to come from these opponents. I would like to know who like the upper people of Nero's group is. Like my hopes for the next chapter is we meet one or two of like the upper members of Poseidon Nero's crew. Like the idea of this, we see Poseidon Nero, and we see you know, like two members of his crew, like whatever his group is. Like, you know, he's got, you know, every group has like a numbered unit. Like, you know, obviously, you know, Draken Joe had the Element 4, you know, any of the Erasion Sace in general, the Erasion Sace Interstellar, anything that's like their numbered kind of like selective group, and maybe like two of them, and just kind of like see like, okay, this is the big boss, and these are two kind of like big opponents, and he's got like X amount more that they're gonna have to defeat, kind of like set up something like that. I don't know, like there's definite high potential. We don't know if that's even gonna be the setup. We don't know if Elsie is gonna show up and take Shiki to Nero, and then we have kind of like this big meetup where it's like kind of like a challenge kind of thing. Who knows? Either way, it's going to be really cool. I'm really interested to see like what exactly the kind of larger story of the series is, because finding Mother is just a large scale goal, but we don't know what we haven't known yet what the big story is. And I think that this is exactly that. I think that everything prior was to getting all the members of Shiki's crew put together, like the main ones, the 4 shining stars, like everyone just kind of all compiled, and then the stuff, you know, obviously the stuff with Homura, like getting all that out of the way, and then obviously that leading to Draken Joe, and it's like, cool, now it's like we got the main cast, and now we're leading into the main story. I feel like this is all going to kind of lead into this some big intergalactic kind of like struggle between all these different groups, and Shiki's is the big rising group that's coming out of it. And the Demon King codes, I think, is definitely going to be one of the subplots I'm very intrigued to see. I'm hoping we at least see Shura before we find out more, like if we see like, oh, one of like 5 or something, or we find out any others. Like maybe just see Shura, and maybe Shura knows of another one and we just don't know how many total. Who knows? Either way, a lot of cool stuff I think actually has really been set up in Eden Zero, and I'm looking forward to how this arc whole plays out, because Mishima's whole lineup for like what's going right now is very different for his other series, and I think it's really cool. So anyway, other than that though, comment below, tell me your thoughts about this chapter. I'd really appreciate you with a thumbs up the video, but friend the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. Rather than that, I appreciate everybody's already subscribed, and thank you all for listening. Bye.